All right, well, we might as well get going here. So we've got a handful of people here. A couple of people were asking why I was doing this talk so late, and the answer was that the world's a pretty big place, and everybody isn't on the same time zone, so it doesn't seem overly fair that we keep sort of trying to schedule stuff that sort of makes it easy for people in the Western Hemisphere to be able to join in and not give a chance to some other people around the globe here. So hopefully, as we bring a couple people up on stage, and if anybody's got a question that they want to ask, go over to the request to speak. We'll bring you up, and hopefully a couple of the people coming up will be international, so we will have justified ourselves starting at midnight, because otherwise it's way easier to do it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So we've got, so who do we have up on stage you out to?
I just brought up Striderson, I think. He had his hand up. I don't know if he took it down or if something happened, but I sent him a request to come up. I don't know if he can hear us or even speak. I know Galen had a question for the Japanese community.
All right, we'll start with Galen then, and then we'll go from there. Even if there's not a lot of questions, and I'll just ramble, which I usually do when I get up on stage and just tell stories, silly
Shoot
stuff.
for the stars.
That's it. All right, Galen, what do you have as we get started here?
Oh yeah, appreciate you coming out so late at night as well. Just two questions from the Japanese community. Question one, pardon me as well if these have already been answered, you can just ignore them. The current trend is NFTs with value-added features such as farming and NFTs used in games. Do you plan to add any value-added features to your NFTs, such as long-term holding privileges?
We've talked about it, and again, it's interesting at the beginning here is that there's so many options and so many possibilities that, you know, the Steve's group and our group have talked about. It's which ones do you come out of the gate with to begin with? Mm-hmm. Because again, what we don't want to do is sort of overwhelm anybody and do too much too fast. We don't, again, we don't want to be too slow and not do a little bit. So by the time we get to our official launch, we will have done our vetting, if you will, of what's happening on other sites that seem to be working or the community seems to be reacting to. And we'll sort of use that data in an educated guess more than anything else that we can then apply to what we're doing. But, again, we keep sort of coming back to the same thing. As collectors ourselves, Steve and I are trying to sort of do as many of the things that we would want people to have done to us if we were new to NFT collecting and we're, sort of geeks trying to get into it instead of trying to worry about sort of riding the rocket of, some big sort of auction hit here and there that's going to grab a headline. We'd rather sort of do things that are going to hopefully, like you're saying, if you do some value add, that will keep bringing people back. And I keep saying the same thing. I think the way that you get people back is you don't take advantage of them. And actually in reverse, you actually give them value. And I don't mean as a value add, but just value period and everything that I end up doing, whether it's toys or comic books or merchandising or whatever else. I always try to sort of under promise and over deliver, and people go, man, that wasn't bad. Todd doesn't seem like he's trying to pick our pocket, and he's not trying to come at us on a regular basis, and you can build slow loyalty, I guess, out of that. So we're just going to bring all the same things to the NFT. I don't think we're going to change our attitude as to how we sort of deal with our fan base.
No, I like that strategy. It seems to fit quite nicely.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, again, I'm new to the NFT sort of community, but it's still all made up of humans, and I think most humans want to be treated fairly at the end of the day, and get a quality product for their dollar. That's it. With some sustainable value in some cases, but even that's not even necessary if you sort of enjoy what it is that you've bought. So.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that answer. And I guess the second question, it kind of falls in the same. This is the last one as well. Someone asked, are there any original features or special goods that, let's say, like a special merch sale for people that are like holding your NFTs exclusively, or like say they buy or they have your NFTs, do they have access to like such a special merch sale? If I'm reading that correctly.
Yeah. So I mean, we don't have that as part of the sort of the
grand scheme
right now, but again, as we get going and we see how many people that may or may not include, then will we possibly tip our hat to some of those customers that are basically sort of in on the ground floor? I'm guessing the answer is yes. Just say, hey, let's just say this VIP pass is only for the people that were there the first couple months and owned something out of the first couple months, just as a thank you to them. So I think those would be fairly easy things to do. They might not be as regular as maybe other people might like, because we don't, it's always weird. There's a balancing act that goes on in any business, that you're trying to continue to say thank you to those that help launch you, but you don't want to do it so much that the people that are coming a little bit late feel like they're being left out of, and it's like, they're getting all the good stuff, they're the first week. So you still sort of struggling to keep all your children happy, right? So some are first. I've got 3 children, right? One of them was first, and Jake, who's up on stage here, was last. But eventually you try to sort of be as fair-minded to all the kids as possible and give them equal amount of love. So.
Yeah, and you don't want to go too far and represent or say like you're going to do this and then have people join you just for that ground floor reward. Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to guess is going to happen. That every time we make a move, we will get comments back, good, bad, or indifferent. And then we'll sort of read them and decide whether it's just a handful of people that, aren't getting what they want. And again, nobody's ever going to please everybody with anything they do. But what you're looking for is there a consistency in the comments, both good or bad? So that, because then it becomes a pattern. And once you start recognizing a pattern, then if it's good, then you try to repeat it. And if it's a consistent comment on a negative side, then you try to avoid it in the future. So that's what we'll be doing. And hopefully you try to keep 90% of the people happy, and you call that a good scorecard.
I agree with that. Cool. Thank you very much. I know they appreciate you answering their questions as well as I do. And thank you for having me. And have a good night, Todd. Thank you.
Good. All right. We got the patron.
Yes. Hello, Todd. First of all, I'm really glad that you're the one doing this, because I've seen your passion in all your previous projects. So I'm glad you're launching this platform. Just 2 questions. I'm an artist, and I'm working with a team to drop an NFT. Well, an NFT collection. We're planning on doing it in Solana, so we're pretty happy right now. So we were asking, do you have an ETA on the platform launching, and are there going to be options for artists to like pre-roll in their collections or something to go with the launch itself?
Yeah, so what the thought is, so let's just see if we can go through some of it. We just had another call the other day, and I was asking, again, as weird as it is, I ask way more technical questions than art questions, because I think that coming up with some cool art drops, I think hopefully should be a given. That's sort of the easy part. What I keep asking is the functionality of the website and what I think at least early on in the game people are going to want. Is all that going to be as flawless as possible, right? So I don't know how many people here play video games or, you know, any other thing that they sort of get excited about. There's sort of a delay. People try to get it right, and then they sort of pressure themselves to just go, I got to hit a street date. And part of it is because you're dealing with public companies and they need to get the revenue. And then they end up putting out the games when they're not fully baked. And then you see it. You see not only the complaints of people being frustrated, which you never want to frustrate your customer, but more so you see a drop off in the number of people that are engaging. And then what ends up happening, you literally spent all those years trying to get there, and because you didn't like hold back another 2 more months to get it right, you spent 4.5 years of developing, and then you let an extra 2 months kill you. We're not a public company. We don't do any of that. And so when I'm talking to the IT guys, if you will, I just go, look at there has to be this and this and this and this, these basic things. And you've got to reassure me that it's going to be near flawless. Because if it's not, we can talk about IT and coding and tech and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, Steve and I are putting our reputations on the line.
Of course.
And so we're only going to be able to sort of get one crack at making a first impression. And we're both very sensitive about that. So when I talk to the Solana people, and I say, hey, here we're all working towards dates, and so again, we were originally trying to do something in the middle of December, but I go, given that there's holidays and everything else, would you feel more comfortable if you had a couple more weeks? And you can hear it in their voice, right? They're like, oh my gosh, yes, right? And so when the people who are building your house are saying that instantly, not with hesitation, then I think the wise choice is to give them the extra 2 weeks or whatever it is they think they need. Again, it shouldn't be unlimited, and everybody should always, we always have these dates in front of us we should be getting to. But as we get closer, then I keep asking, Steve keep asking, okay, now we're getting closer to quote unquote opening, launch. Do we have everything buttoned up? Because what I don't want to do, I keep asking, I go, why are we chasing potentially an artificial day, right? It's the date isn't what is important to me as it is of getting it functional for the fans out of the gate, right out of the bat. And part of it is because I think there's going to be people who are new to NFT, right? And so people who have been in the business maybe are a little bit used to bugs, if you will, in this space, because it's just sort of the nature of what's going on right now. But people from the outside don't know that. So I don't think their patience is going to be there. And so, they're going to assume that when they go to a website, like they go to eBay or Amazon, that when they push certain buttons, it's going to all work. And I don't think that's unreasonable. So that's it. So right now, like I said, we were hoping, about the middle of December, but because of the holidays and stuff like that, right now the new date is like, near the beginning of January to give them a couple extra weeks. So still, not a hard day, but that's where we're at.
Okay, sounds like a perfectly reasonable ETA.
I
It's a
think
good approach.
I think Steve and I were on stage, and I know he maybe gets a little frustrated with me because I'm like the old man, and I'm like, I'm like super cautious of going, guys, like I understand we can throw a party, but if we don't have any sort of snack foods while everybody's in the house, and it's not much of a party. If the music doesn't work, so we can get the people, but there's just these other little tiny pieces that to me just need to be there just to make the party just a little bit more enjoyable. And now they're feeling pretty good about most of it right now, so that's actually a good thing. They just want to fine tune a couple things too, and then I'm sure we'll be totally deficient on some other things, and luckily the crowd has been pretty vocal about letting us know what they want and what they don't want, sort of post buying it. I think to me I break it into two categories. There's sort of like, what's the lead up into looking at what the offerings are and potentially making a purchase, and then what's the experience after the purchase. And those are two pieces that may be as equally important, or in some cases one side will be more important to an individual than the other. So we have to get them both pretty solid, both pretty solid. Not perfect. We're not going for perfection, but solid, so that we can say, hey, it's as good as we got right now, and don't worry about it. We're going to keep making it smoother and smoother, and adding new additions to it.
Right. I have one more question, but before that, I wanted to tell you this because I've seen it many places around, especially when I announced my NFT projects to my audience, which is not usually crypto related. There's a lot of skepticism regarding the environmental thing, and luckily in Solana that's not an issue at all. So you should probably market that really hard.
Yes,
because it's usually on Ethereum the problem.
Yes, I was
you gotta market it hard.
I was having this conversation with somebody the other day because somebody was saying that, first it was my wife, saying, "Hey Todd, there's some negative stuff about you going to NFT," and I'm like, "What? That's weird." And then a couple other people, but there's a lot of it is that sort of repetition of the environmental. Let me just say that humans are very good at repeating stuff if they hear it a lot, right? And there's a concern. It's one of the reasons why we actually went to Solana, because it is way more sort of eco-friendly. So that was a conscious choice, and at the time, it wasn't a popular choice. Let me tell you, because Ethereum was where all the hip parties were, right, and where all the big sales were coming from. But to me, it was like, one, it didn't allow us to be able to lower prices, which was important to myself and Steve. And there was another option to basically be more environmentally friendly, which is over on the Solana side. It's just that at that point, everybody had sort of built their house on the other side of the street. And so I was asking for the bridge. I go, well, is there a bridge? They can just sort of come over to the sort of more eco-friendly and sort of cheaper minting side of things. And even 4 months ago, the IT people were telling me no. And now the answer is like, oh yeah, not only can you make a bridge, the bridge has already been built and people are migrating right now. Yeah. But I think that comment is coming from a lot of people who are new to the space, that if I was to engage with them, which I won't, because you can't win that battle.
Oh yeah.
That I just go, well, well, what do you know about NFTs, and what's the difference between, Ethereum as compared to what we're doing as Solana? Do you know? And the answer, my guess, with the vast majority of them, is that they don't know. They just heard something, they saw a headline, they think it's not, it's bad. But I'm assuming the people who think it's bad are also the people who don't get NFTs as a subject matter.
Yeah.
For the most part, anyways. And so there will be obviously an education that's going to be going on, not only at our end, but just people who are in the space. I mean, everybody that is now in the audience, I'm sure, has already had to explain NFTs to some of their friends or families or acquaintances, because there's plenty of people around us that this is still an unknown thing. It's still not tangible to them on any kind of real. They don't get it, right? They just don't get it yet.
Yeah. Okay. Just the last question. Will OddKey itself have a token?
Yeah, we'll make one. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. All right, that's all. Just thank you for having me. I've followed you since I was like 10. I love all your stuff, dude. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure, thank you. We got Striderson, who's been up on stage there. I don't know if his audio is working. Can you hear us? He's just gonna hang. So
Strider? Oh, he messaged in chat and said he had gotten it fixed, so I brought him back up.
In the meantime, Jake, you're there. Can you click yours on?
Yeah, what's up?
Okay, so I'm just going to introduce everybody to Jake. This is my son, so it's not a coincidence. He happens to have the same last name. He's got a clever handle here on Discord called Jake Mcfarlane. So it's not nearly his sort of creative as his old man, which is Todd. But Jake is going to be sitting next to me, everybody side by side on the NFT side of things. So, I try to sort of jump on Discord and answer questions and goof around, just sort of have fun as much as possible. But I also, run multiple businesses and, have my personal life. I got to sort of balance in there too. So Jake is going to be sort of side by side with me on this journey that we're going down, and then we'll become the company and expert in NFT. I've given him sort of a little bit of pressure of within 6 to 8 months, he's got to be able to literally download every single one of my employees of what NFTs are from A to Z. But the reason for me introducing him here is that if you see his name and you have questions, then he will hopefully be able to sort of find answers for everybody, or if not, he can go and find it. Or even if it's just a stupid question about, hey, ask your dad this question right here, he can even maybe take some of the repetitions of some of those questions and say, Dad, they keep asking you these 5 questions. What's the answer to all these ones here? So if you don't see me, then Jake is easily your next best bet on the Mcfarlane side. I mean, obviously you got Steve and his team. They're good people. We'll be downloading all the moderators and the people on the Solana side, so they'll have sort of some intel as we sort of break it down. So there'll be plenty of people to ask questions, but I just want to introduce him to you. So if you see him, don't be shy about getting sort of serious with your questions, because he's not just here to be a fan. He's here to actually be a sort of an ambassador to make sure that you guys can get all of your questions and your queries right. So I don't know. Am I missing anything, Jake? You want to add to that?
Yeah, just a little bit, because we had talked about it in a different chat bubble. Ueda, I think is how you pronounce it, is also up on stage, had said that a majority of queries kind of go his way. I'll definitely be able to answer more on the Mcfarlane side of things, but for now, NFT and Discord questions should probably be directed towards him because I won't have those answers right now.
Get him. Ozek, is that Ozek? Now, now I'm curious. I say you ought to, and you're saying you ought to. So now you got to tell me what is it? How do you say it?
It's Uatu.
Okay, that's what I got it. Bing bang.
Yeah, Uatu.
I hadn't heard it out loud yet, to be fair.
Okay. Bingo. Old man 1. Young Gen 0 for right now. Cool.
Boomer's taking it to the house.
We don't get too many of those, so we have to do our happy dances when we can get them. So
Hey, show off.
all right, appreciate it, Jake. Appreciate it. Is Stry there, or if not, we'll bring somebody up. Can you hear us?
He's sitting there trying to trigger. I think he's still having issues. You're going to have to go into your phone settings, Strider, and probably allow Discord access to use your mic before it actually activates. So come back again, and after you get that sorted, and I'll pull you up again, boss.
Yeah. All right, we got Ulig the Watcher.
Mcfarlane, how are you?
Good. Were you up here the other day?
I was the one who popped your Discord cherry.
Yeah. I thought so.
That's it. I've got a question for the international community for you because they weren't able to get up here and ask, so I thought I'd jump up and ask it for you. And I'm actually excited about this question too because as a gaming nerd, it's great to meet other ones who share us the same passion. So the question from them was, you talk about being a tabletop gamer and gaming during Discord. Tell us about it. Tell us about the passion there. Tell us what your favorite tabletop game is. Look, mine's Cyberpunk, the old school Cyberpunk. I'm a massive Traveler and Cyberpunk fan. But yeah, let's hear about yours.
Well, so I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna geek out a little bit. So when I was a kid, and I'm a sports nut, and I had my, I got a brother a year younger, brother a year older, and so we were complete sports nuts. I told a story the other day about getting that last card of the 72 top set. It was like the holy grail. But we used to also buy magazines. Sports magazines, and in the magazines there used to be this company. I used to refer to it as APBA. Some people call it APA, but I used to just call it by the letters APBA. It was a sort of a baseball sim game. Sort of the granddaddy of it. That there's other, the big game that people know is Stratomatic that ended up getting way more popular over the years, but APBA was sort of the granddaddy that sort of led the charge. So we would I would clip out the coupon that was in the magazines and I'd send it away. And although it seems silly, if you look at the cards, it's just a bunch of numbers on it. It's basically what I tell the young kids now. It's basically all the coding that you see in your games that you're playing now that are super sophisticated. This is just, we didn't have that when I was a kid. I'm talking about now like the early 70s, 1970s. Mm-hmm. But what the numbers were was the math, and it was pretty tight math, and it's gotten pretty sophisticated since, of simulating the percentages of all the activities that player would do. Anyway, So what you could do is literally replay a baseball season, right? And then they started offering old seasons, so I could replay the 1937 National League season or whatever else. So we played that like feverishly for years and years and years, and it led to many fights and a lot of tears and a lot of punches between the brothers. We were all sort of bad sports, and nobody ever wanted to lose in the bottom of the ninth. We got in trouble with my mom. A lot of, it was it was a terrible one. But probably about 10, 15 years ago, I saw some of them again. I go, I'm going to buy another set. I'd gotten away from it for a while. And I bought another set, and I bought another set, and then I go, I'll buy another set, and another set. And then pretty soon, I got to the point where I believe nobody's sort of challenged me that I have the largest APBA collection of anybody. And I've got every baseball season, every football season, every basketball season that came out.
Oh, wow.
Most of the hockey, the soccer, just because I'm just a geek. I mean, I'll never play it, but a fraction of it. I just got, and so I used to do replays, and then I would post them up on like the Delphi forums and stuff like that. And I was the guy that was trying to see if I could get as close to the real numbers as possible. But for some reason, I was on vacation, and I usually bring some of the sports games with me. I didn't. And then I ended up coming across a company called GMT Games. And for the most part, they do quote unquote war games. And so I ordered a couple of those and sort of put the sports ones away, and sort of got a little bit addicted to a couple of the war games, and then bought some more, and bought some more, and bought some more. And I think now, like if you go to Board Game Geek, which is this huge site for anybody that does any tabletopping, it's this giant website that you punch in almost any game you've ever played in your life, and they've got like the name, the rating, what the details of it, forums, like everything. I mean, sometimes I try to trick it and go, I bet they don't have this game. When I was a kid, when I was 5, and sure enough, it's in there. But I don't know. Maybe I've got a collection now of over 100 of them now. I don't want to get too crazy because I see people got like hundreds and they're never going to play it. And so now I've gotten to the point where I go, I'd just rather play 10 of them a lot, become very good at them. And so there is a group of them that GMT puts out, and they're called coin games, and it's short for counterinsurgency games. And to me, it's just sort of, in the simplest way, to me, you're just playing chess, right? You're just constantly playing chess against your fellow player. But I go over to the Vassal site, right? So I think right now I'm in 6 games over on Vassal. So if anybody plays tabletop games and want to go over to Vassal, you'll see they'll put out an offer, and I'll probably jump on it, especially if it's a coin game. I've constantly got sort of games going all the time, but I don't know. I find them to just be sort of brain exercises that can you out strategize an opponent, which is a little bit different than in video games where I watch my son, where it's like, can you mash the buttons quicker than me, right? And have the skill set. A lot of the games that I'm playing are, if I do this move, do you know what the counter move to it is? Sort of like chess, right? Okay, I move my rook, I move my castle. What are you going to do? What's your next move? And you better be smart with your move, because I get to counter it as soon as you're done. And so there's my enjoyment. My wife hates all of it. She doesn't get any of the games because she goes, I want to play games where I laugh and I smile. And it's like, shit, like that's not chess, right? So, it's not a game that you have a lot of joy. It's a game where you sort of see if you can outthink your opponent. So I can't say the games I play are probably for everybody, but I get a kick out of them, and I'm getting pretty fluent. So I know the nuances now. So I'm getting to be quasi expert on a couple of them. So. You still with me, Ulith?
Should be somewhere. He might be having issues.
So if not, as we bring somebody else up, I'll tell you guys a stupid story of how stupid I am with sort of the games and stuff like that. So I was telling you I played the baseball game. So I was doing a replay of one of the full baseball seasons. And I had figured out how to like move it around fairly easily if I could. But one of the places I was able to like continue the games and move them was if I have to go to the bathroom and drop a deuce. I could sit there and go, I'm going to be here for 15 minutes. I can get through half a game, right? So I had this sadly wasn't that long ago. I had a game and it was between the New York Mets and the St. Louis Cardinals. And because it's tabletop, you roll a lot of dice, and it's the roll of the dice that gives you your result. So it was the bottom of the eighth, and the Cardinals were losing by 1 run, but they had guys on second and third, and it was 2 outs. And the batter came up, and I rolled the dice, and one of the dice stayed on the little cardboard thing I had on my lap as I was taking a turd, and the other one squirted somehow between my legs and fell into the shitter. Right now, it was sort of murky down there, and I was like, oh my gosh. So now, like, what do? Right? You don't have your result. But because I knew what the first dice was, there was 2 out of 6 chances on the other dice. They were 6-sided dice. That if it was like a 1 and a 6, 1 or a 6, then it was going to be a base hit, and the Cardinals were going to take the lead. And so I didn't know what to do. I was like, I got to finish it. So I had to get off the shitter. I had to look down. I mean, it was soupy brown water at that point. I reached my hand down into the water until I found what was the chunk that actually was square, because there was a couple other chunks down there. And I made sure that I pulled the dice out so that I didn't turn it. So I would keep the result of that dice roll, even though it had gone through my legs, fell into the toilet, bounced up a couple of turd balls, and landed at the bottom of the toilet. I pulled it out, my hand dripping and sort of disgusting, and I got the result. Now, it was an out. The guy didn't get a base hit. It was one of the other numbers, so he actually grounded out, and the inning was over. But that's the dedication that I have to these games. I'm willing to put my hand in shit water to make sure that I don't cheat and I get the proper results of what's happening. So I don't know that there's that many people that are. I think other people would have just gone and got another pair of dice and rolled a little bit later for that result. But you just, if you're going to do it, you take it to the mat. And so that's sort of my mentality with all this stuff. I can be a little obsessive about any and all of it. So, if everybody's got a better story than that, then I'd like to hear it. So, all right, Edda, it looks like you're up. I don't know if you've got a question here.
Yeah. Hey, Todd. Hey, Jake. How you both doing? Todd, I've got 2 questions for you, one on a personal front, one from the community.
Fire.
The first one is a double-sided question. Firstly, if you had the opportunity, would you customize my Hulk 181 for me? And if the answer is yes, what would you customize it with?
181 is the issue that is the first appearance of Wolverine for the non-comic geeks out there. It's a pretty key issue. It's pretty cool too that Wolverine's Canadian. I'm Canadian. Jake is a self-professed Canadian, but my wife and I have moved down, so he's actually a little bit of a Yankee baby. So we try not to hold that against him too much. But 181, I don't know. I in all honesty, I probably wouldn't customize it because it's too good of a book, right? I mean, like there's certain books that to me I get a little intimidated by, that you don't want to mess with them. As a matter of fact, sometimes you don't even want to sign them because you think you're going to be defacing an otherwise good book there. So usually on the books that I didn't have anything to do, I usually stay away from them because I go, I don't deserve to put my hand on this book. Take it to to the artist Herb Trimpe, that was the artist of the book, or the guy who helped create Hulk, Jack Kirby or Stan Lee, when they were both alive. But I usually sort of stay away from those and just sign my Spidey and my Spawns and whatever else, some of the other stuff I've done in between those books. So unfortunately, I probably would put my hands up and go, I can't touch that. It's like the Holy Grail, and I'm not going to deface it. Let somebody else go and deface it. Now, I've seen other artists, let me tell you, and other creative people in my industry, they don't care. You can put anything in front of them; they'll just write over anything, so and scribble over it. So I'm also, and this may be a little sort of silly. There's two things. There's two or three things that I do when I sign a comic book. One, I make it legible, right? It's sort of amazing to me how much sort of street cred you get from the fans, because they go, "Oh my God, your signature is legible," right? And that legibility came from the mere fact that I used to go get autographs when I was 16, 17, when I was first starting to go to conventions. And I used to think that when people had their name on the comic book, that was actually their signature. And so I eventually got to go to my first convention, because, sort of at that point, being up in Canada, we didn't have a lot. But I remember going down to San Diego for the very first time when it was still small, and given a couple books to people who I admired, and they signed it, and I was shocked and horrified at the same time that their signature didn't look like what I had seen for years, literally, on the comic book. And I remember asking a couple of them, go, why don't you sign your name like right there on the comic book? And they're like, little boy, that's not my signature. That's just my name, right? We just put our name so that there's a way people know who did the artwork. That's not my signature, though. I always thought it was their signature. So, it shocked me so much that I remember literally at that time, being 16, 17, saying, man, if I'm ever on that side of the table, I'm going to make whatever the way I sign it on, and whatever my signature is, whatever you want to call it, that's on the cover, I'm going to make, that's how I sign it with my hand. So that if you put the two together, you can go, look at, there's the guy's name printed on the cover, and there he is, he just signed it, and it's pretty damn close. Because I didn't want to have anybody feel like I felt when I was 16, which I felt like I was let down. So I try to give a legible signature. Number two, I try to pick the right color. I usually have 4 or 5 different colors around me, because, sometimes silver doesn't look good on a cover that has a lot of white and gray and blue. It doesn't bounce. You almost can't see it. And I would say the same if you pick like gold, which a lot of people like to sign with, that if you've got something that has a lot of browns in it and some shadows and some copper tones and whatever, you can lose it very quickly. So I'm constantly sort of saying, hey, if this was my book, every book in front of me, I treat it like it was mine. If this was my book, what color would I want? And now, not only do I got to get the right color, but where do I place the signature so you can see it, right? To me, and it's just me personally, nobody ever sort of asked, but to me, it's like, I should put the signature in a place where if you were to hang it up on the wall, frame it and put it up on the wall, that you should be able to see the signature from 5 feet away. And if not, then I've done a bad job. Now, let me tell you, there's a couple comic books where it's impossible to accomplish that, because I drew too many lines on the cover and there's no easy space to sign it. So the covers that have like an empty spot in the corner here and there, those are the best ones, because I can put a big fat signature with a big contrasting color on it, and you can read that not from 5 feet, you can read it from 25 feet. And to me, it's like, that's it, look at that. And the signature matches, that to me is perfect. But there's the odd cover I did where I wasn't thinking about all this stuff. I was just drawing a cool cover that I didn't leave myself any good place to actually put a signature that people could see very well. And every time I sign those books, it frustrates me. So.
Thanks for that one. I've got one from the community, but can I just say I was really hoping you would draw a Venom next to Wolverine for me on that Hulk 181. So I have to rethink that one. But I'm just going to read this one out to make sure I get the question right for the person who asked it. Their question was, Todd, what are your thoughts about Miles Morales and the Miles storyline, given your interest in doing a story about Spider-Man and the stockbroker in the past?
In all honesty, I'm really not that fluent with what the newer characters that Marvel and DC have do. Unfortunately, I'm so busy with what I'm doing, I barely have time to even read, but a fraction of our own comics at Image Comics. So what I do know, not only about Miles, but some of the other characters, is that there seems to be, since I've left the company, and that was back in 1991, at both Marvel and DC, more of a concerted effort to add more international flavor, to add more female figures, to add more diversity in the characters as a whole, to give, just a little bit more of a mixture. If you look at, again, some of the early comic books, especially during the 60s, it was pretty homogeneous in terms of sort of, all the guys sort of looked the same. They're all good looking dudes. They're all about 6'2", 210 pounds. They were all white guys. And the ladies sort of had a consistent look, but it wasn't an accident that when I created Spawn that I decided to use as a minority character. Not because I have lived the life of a minority, although I'm Canadian in America, so I guess there's a little bit, but I don't really have a voice to give to sort of a person who has lived in America as a Black person. So I didn't want to make that a topic. I just thought that why not, right? I played sports, so there's a pretty wide range of people who play sports from all communities, and when I had to sort of give an identity to the character, it was, I had sort of experienced enough in my life at that point, although I would sort of just turn 30. And I just wanted to just try something a little bit different and just see why not. Why couldn't the next Superman, Batman not be a good looking white dude, right? And it was overly simplistic. So I applaud what Marvel and DC and anybody's doing, that basically, without being heavy handed and trying to cram a message down anybody's throat, just sort of just naturally put characters out there that happen to come from all walks of life. So I don't know why anybody would be upset why any of that's happening. So good on it. Oh, and by the way, I heard his movie was pretty badass. So.
Thanks, Todd. I'm sure the community would appreciate you answering that one for them.
All right.
Just quickly, Todd, I got a question that has been looking for an answer for over a week. I don't know if it's been answered or if it can be answered.
For a week, okay. I like to answer stale questions.
Let me see. When Spawn takes the earth away from God and Satan, where did souls go when people died?
There's plenty of places, and here's, I mean, again, you've got purgatory and you've got the void and you've got other places. Here's the thing that I'm doing, if you've been paying attention a little bit with
he says, to clarify, after gaining godly powers from the mother of creation.
So the sad thing is that I sort of have all this information in my head that I know about, that maybe the subtleties are being lost on people. one of the things I'm trying to say in the Spawn comic book, and I don't sort of hit it that heavy, but from time to time I try to bring it to the surface, is that the question, and this is an interesting question, the question you're asking is based upon a perception of what we've been taught as real human beings in real life, right? And so all religions will sort of teach you what it is that's written in their books. And so those become sort of canon, if you will, for the stories that you have. What I'm saying in my story is that what we've been taught, I'm trying to take it sort of on a realistic level. What we've been taught has been a con, has been a bit of a con game. That once you get and you peel it back, you actually see that there isn't that much difference between heaven and hell or good and evil. That it's a very fine line. And I always say that, at least in the Spawn comic book, that the only difference between heaven and hell is that one of them has a better PR firm. Because when I go through the checklist of what each side wants, and I know that we're taught that heaven is like perfect and hell is like bad, but I'm that's too easy, right? There's been 1,000 books like that. I'm trying to just put a twist on it, and so I've got like this checklist, and if I had them both sitting in front of me, I'd say, hey, little Satan, little God, what is it that you want? Let's go do and I think they both would say the same thing. They'd say, oh, I want to beat up my mortal enemy. Okay, well, the guy downstairs just wants to take out the guy upstairs. The guy upstairs wants to take out the guy downstairs. Okay, good. So check. Okay, you guys want the same thing. What else you want? Oh, we'd both like to sort of control the earth. Okay, so that's the same. And how would you do that? Well, we need basically the people on the blue ball to basically bend a knee to us and make sure that they're loyal to us and make us their lord. Okay, check. And when you start going down the checklist, to me, I've sort of gotten it so that it's like they both have the exact same motivation. They both want to have control over our free will. And Spawn's whole thing is he almost disavows both of them and just says, look, we're flawed human beings. We're going to make plenty of mistakes. And I'm sure in time we'll probably destroy ourselves on our own. What we don't need is temptation and all the other things that you guys are doing to basically sort of unbalance what we're already doing. So why don't you guys just go away, leave us alone, and let us just lead our lives and let us be as like flawed human beings, and maybe we'll figure it out, maybe we won't. But we don't need you guys interfering in this gig. And that's sort of his whole sort of mission, which is to just sort of push these outside influences. In our real world, sometimes we call them, big government and big corporations. Nobody likes to sort of be dictated how to sort of live their lives. And so I just sort of took the concept of going, okay, what's the biggest sort of things that could be sort of the bad guy? And it was like, oh, it's the stuff that they used to teach us when we were young kids. It's like not corporations, not religious leaders. It's heaven and hell. That was it. That was as big as it got. So I always thought that if Spawn could solve that puzzle, he would become possibly one of the great heroes. I'm not saying he will, and I don't even know that he's got the power, the intelligence to do it. But he's at least now aware that what he was taught when he was alive as a human, he's now on the other side of the curtain, and it's not anything that he was taught in any book. And so, but what's he going to do? He can't do it. He's even got one character that is super religious that he won't. He wouldn't even tell her because he knows it would break her heart, because she likes to go to church 3 times a week, and it's important in her life, and he's not going to take that away from her. So he just has to sort of do this fight on his own a little bit. So a lot of little silly things. And you know, I'm not religious, so it's easy for me to sort of bend this stuff because I don't think I'm getting in trouble. I'm sure somebody else that maybe was practicing one of the 3,000 religions on the planet might feel a little subconscious. I don't. I'm not here to make any of it bad. I'm just here to say that go humans, right? Go free will. That's sort of the big long journey of all of it. So. All right, we got Chuck, it looks like, up on stage. Can you hear us, Chuck?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
We can. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you too, Todd. You know it's late over there, so thanks for this. Just got a question, probably going back a little bit now. When was the first time that you realized you actually wanted to do comics and everything all professionally, and sort of what led to that decision? Like, what was a bigger passion for you growing up? Was it baseball or was it your art?
No, I shoot. Baseball was number one for a long time.
Yeah.
I think I gave up that dream. I think when I turned 53, I eventually said, maybe I'm not going to get drafted. So, so I was the proverbial frustrated athlete. That would have been like the coolest, to just have one at bat in a stadium.
Yeah.
With 50,000. I always said I wanted to have one at bat, 50,000 people, but I wanted to be on enemy turf, right? Because I didn't want them cheering for me. I wanted them to be so loud that if I did my job and I got the right hit, I could silence the stadium. I think that was just as cool as getting your side to explode and cheer for you. Can you silence 50,000 people with one swing of a bat? But I'll never know because I never got the opportunity. I wasn't good enough to ever have that opportunity. So it was a delusion on my part. I had a friend that I came to comic books pretty late. And so I had a friend whose dad delivered magazines. And as part of delivering magazines, comic book was part of that, right? And so I'm going back to literally before comic book shops and things like that, where the only time you could buy a comic book was, either a drugstore on what we call a spinner rack, or they just sort of put them on shelves next to all the other magazines that were there. And so when I went to my friend's house, he had like a stack of comic books, and the reason was because his dad would bring some of them home and he would peel them off. And so at that point, though, my buddy was, sort of getting bored of comics, so he would give me a stack of them and say, "Hey, you want to take some of these home and read them?" And I'd take them home and I'd read it, and I just very quickly got infatuated with them. The style of it, because again, I was always a doodler. I was always drawing all the time, but I had no focus on my art. I had 25 different styles. It was
I had no direction for it to point into.
Right. So once I saw the comic books, and at some point I gave the comic books back, I reached into my own pocket, went to the local, sort of corner store, bought 5 comic books, and that led to a collection that got as high as 30,000 copies. I mean, I became a freak. But I took all those comic books and just went, hey, I'm going to teach myself this style, because that's all it is, right? It's a American superhero comic book style. And I just looked at those books and said, this is cool. I'm going to focus on this, just like baseball. I'm going to focus. I'm going to train myself now in this skill. And I did it through high school. So I started pretty late, like at 16. Did it through high school. Went to college, on a baseball scholarship. And at night, so let me walk you through what my normal day was when I was in college. I'd get up, I'd go to probably about 5:30. I'd go to practice. Practice was sometimes between like 6 and 8, because we had an indoor place that we could do if it was too dark outside. I'd do the practice. I'd go out. I'd go to my classes from about 8 o'clock to about 1 o'clock. Then we'd have a second practice, and we'd practice from about 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Sometimes we'd go into the gym and do some weightlifting for about an hour. And then I had, as part of my scholarship, I had a job as a janitor for 3 hours. So then I'd go and be a janitor for 3 hours. Then I'd go grab some dinner. And by that time, I'd have to get my schoolwork done. So I'd do that for a couple hours. And at that point, it was midnight. And then I'd pull out some paper and I would draw for about an hour and a half, 2 hours until about 1 or 2 o'clock. And then I'd do it all over again the next day. And so I just was doing all this stuff, but I just go, I got to get my pages in. I got to get my training, not only over baseball, not only for getting my degree, because they were giving me a free scholarship. So even though I was a dumb guy, I go, I'm going to figure out if I can get a scholarship, a degree out of it, because they're giving it to me for free. And I'm going to see if I can hone my drawing abilities. And during those 3 years, I was sending off samples, as I've told the story sort of many times, where over those 3 years, I sent out like over 700 samples to every editor I could think of that was in comic books, because they're the ones that give you the job. And eventually, after about 3 years of sending letters and packages and my portfolios and copies of all this stuff over and over and over and over and over and over, and hundreds of rejections, eventually, after 2 weeks before I'm graduating college, and I did get a degree, the phone rings and I get my first job from an editor at Marvel Comic Books. And so I started and sort of never looked back, right? I mean, there was a hiccup. Let me tell you, there was a hiccup early that even though it took all that drive to get my first job, I was working on this book, it was Coyote. I was in the back, because I wasn't even doing the Coyote character. I was doing a backup story. And I only did, I think 4 issues, and I only did like 10 pages in each book in the back. But they phoned me and said they're canceling the book. And they said, Todd, the book was never really a big seller, so it has nothing to do with you. Don't take it personally. It was always on the ropes. So thanks, but no thanks. And so very quickly, it took me all that time to get in the front door.
And then it closed.
Yeah, it was like a boom. And so what I've told people before is that one of the things that you need to happen in your life is you need to have dumb luck. It has to sort of frequent your doorstep the odd time. And unfortunately, the dumb luck is actually bad luck for somebody else. And in this case, what happened was once they sort of shut down the book, and I was technically unemployed then at that point, I used to keep track of who I used to send all my samples to. So I pulled out that list and I resent it to all these people, except for I had one big piece that I could change in the cover letter. I could say I've been working at Marvel for 4 months. So I was professional. In 4 months, was I any better than I was before I got that job? Of course I wasn't. It was 4 months. I hadn't honed my abilities in 4 months and 40 pages. It wasn't any better. But I was able to say I work for Marvel, and that put me to the top of a couple piles, because instead of it being amateurs that were sending their portfolios hoping to get in, I could say I'm already in, even though I had just gotten basically laid off. And one of the guys phones me up and says, and here's my good luck, somebody else's bad luck, is that he had an artist on his book, and this guy was a bodybuilder, and I remember seeing pictures of him, and he had some of the best anatomy drawing that was out there, and he looked like a stud. I saw him, I go, shit, he's just drawn his own body. he looked like Superman. But he was a health nut, and he decided one day to drink unpasteurized milk, and without sort of testing it, he had an allergic reaction. They rushed him to the hospital, and by the time he got to the hospital, he was dead. So,
oh shit!
His artist literally had passed away, in the prime of his life. So, what did that mean? It mean he had a book and he had no artist, and he needed to fill it fast. And so, I just happened to be sending my samples back to him, saying, "Hey, I just did 40 pages for Marvel," and he phoned me up and said, "Hey, Todd, I've got an opening. Is there any way you'd come on for one issue and do this book?" It was 25 pages. 25 pages. I'm like, "What? I'm only doing 10. 25? Woo. Yeah, sure. I'm in. And he said, "I got somebody else taking over the book, so I just need you for the one issue." And I'm like, "I'll take whatever I can get." And halfway through that issue, it was on a book called Infinity Incorporated. He phones me back up and says, "Oh yeah, the guy that was supposed to take over the book bailed. So do you want to just stay on the book? I'll just make you the regular artist." And it was like, hell yeah, dude. And when I sort of got that contract for that book, that he said, "Yeah, you're going to be the regular artist," I now had enough money to be able to sort of say, "Man, I'd been dating my wife or my girlfriend at that point for 7 years, Jake's mom, and so I now had enough money that I could, go out and get a small diamond ring, bend a knee, and marry my sweetheart, who I've been married to for 36, 37 years now."
Very nice, very nice.
So it was, but I do wonder. I do at times wonder what happens if that guy doesn't drink that milk. Right? So,
yeah.
Do I get another job someplace? Possibly. Does it all play out the same way? I don't know. But there's just these moments that just appear, and you've got to just sort of take advantage of them. And it ended up sort of leading to, the dominoes tumbling, because what ended up happening is I ended up being on Infinity Incorporated for a year and a half. What it proved, not that I was a great artist but I did get better. Let me just say I got better because they were paying me to do 25 pages a month now. But it proved that I could keep a deadline. And in our business, that's literally the gold standard. And so that couple years of showing I could hit a deadline, when I left DC to go over to Marvel to see if I could, find another job someplace else, they said, "Oh yeah, we see you've been able to keep your deadlines. We'll give you a crack on this, fill-in book. And if you do good on that, there's a couple other opportunities." And I passed the first test, and they said, "Hey, somebody just dropped out of the Incredible Hulk. You want to do the Hulk?" And all of a sudden, it was like I was finally doing a book that my mom and dad had heard of. A character.
Yeah, with a big name behind it.
Yeah, and that was sort of the moment where my mom and dad went, "Our son has made it. He's doing the Hulk." Because, like, it was a word that they knew, even though I'd been in the business for 2-3 years at that point. It was sort of me going on the Hulk. But then doing the Hulk then leads to, doing a little bit of Batman and a couple other things, but eventually is what leads me to getting the job on Spider-Man that blows up my career, that then leads me to Spawn, blah, blah, blah. But I can trace it all the way back to still asking my question, if the guy's name was Don Newton, if Don Newton doesn't pass away because of an allergic reaction, what happened in that moment where I was unemployed? What did I have a 4-month career, or would I have landed on my feet, and would I still have gotten to where I got to? I don't know. It's a weird thought that I'm sure have those moments in our lives, and you're sort of thankful that they happen. So.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you for that.
All right. We'll see if we can. You got anything else, or we let you go?
Yeah, no, that's all good. You very well answered that very well. Thank you for that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Oh, is Stride?
Hey, is it working?
Is this Stride?
Yep, this is Stride.
Oh, look at that. 3rd time's a charm. Big shot. So,
Right, man. I wish it would have been 3. Glad to see
Yeah.
Strider.
Hey,
Okay.
if it makes you feel any better, the first time I came up on stage, I was going, how do I even get the audio to work, right? So join the club. So
Okay. First of all, let me just say I love you. I love your work and everything. I'm wearing a Venom shirt right now, and Spawn has got to be like my favorite superhero of all time.
I
But
appreciate it.
oh, gotta love, like, you're my second favorite artist. I'm sorry, my wife kind of takes precedence there. She said so.
Oh shoot, make her happy. Come on.
But anyway, so the mouse question was mine. But I was also wondering, like, can you tell us any more about your Spawn movie? You know, not the '90s Bandit, the Ranch one, but the one that you're actively working on.
Yeah. So Hollywood is a sort of a funny place to me because I'm so used to literally putting out a book every month, coming up with ideas, putting it on paper, writing it up, and getting it printed and colored and everything out, and then sending it out, and you can consume it, and doing it all over again in 30 days. The toy company is the same way. We put out a lot of product over the course of a year, literally hundreds and hundreds of figures. We ship them all out. So I'm used to things happening at a faster pace. I'm going to assume that the easy answer as to why development takes so long in Hollywood is because a lot of the projects they're spending tens, if not hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on, right? If you ever seen the budgets of movies like, the latest James Bond or any of the Marvel movies or whatever, those
it's crazy.
They're north of 200 million US dollars, right? So you can imagine that there's a lot of anxiety on any bet that you make when you lay down $200 to make a bet. 200.
Yeah.
So because of that, everybody sort of slow plays everything. So it's just a natural progression of how people sort of do it. So we were going along. I had finished up a script, sent it to a couple people. I got lukewarm sort of reception to it. Wasn't sort of what were hoping for, but there's still a lot of interest in Spawn itself. That the studios are like, man, we still want to do it, Todd, but there may be better writers than you out there, especially if they're going to make 50, 80, $100 million bet. So I had written a script that was going to be really low budget, so it wouldn't be such a big bet. So it wouldn't have to be sort of overthought and done whatever. But when the pandemic came, we ended up making a shift and brought on a writer, and then we just recently got another writer to help sort of partner up with them. We haven't gone public with a huge name, and when it comes out eventually, I think everybody in the comic book community is going to be both shocked and happy at the same time. So we're still pushing the boulder up the hill. I wish it could go faster, but I keep sort of saying, name's Todd, only rhymes with God. I don't get to control like everything in my life. And so as much as I think it's going slow, I run into other people in Hollywood go, yeah, I've been working on this idea for 9 years and it's finally going to get made. So it's people are sort of working on it. Like some big talented people are working to move it right now. I just wish, I'm sure plenty of fans too would wish that I would stop talking about it and just go, Todd, when can we see it? But hopefully, I just had another 2 conversations about it this week, and hopefully at some point we'll have some positive news because everything's going in that direction. But I'm at the point now where it's like, hey, I think that there's only 2 more pieces of information that they want to care about. One, we've got a studio that's going to put out the money that's going to set us into production. And then two, well, so when's that mean that it's coming out? That's just it, right? They're making it. Piece of news one, and eventually when's it coming out? Piece of news number two. And to some extent, everything in between is white noise. I mean, if I'm on the set, I'll make sure I sneak a bunch of photos and put them out in social media so everybody can see it, so that it's not just fibbing. And I'll show you a bunch of silly stuff. But that's it. But in the meantime, we're developing. Like I've got 4 or 5 TV shows that we're developing and doing all that. But
I just
who knows? Who knows? It's an aggravating process. But that's why I keep my day job. So.
Yeah. Like I can't speak for everyone, but I cannot wait to see Jeremy Renner's Switch and Jamie Foxx, donning the costume and whatnot. But hopefully we'll see it sometime, maybe within the next 10 years or so.
Oh no, it'll be way sooner than that for sure.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah,
but and once again, love your work, and thanks for just answering the questions.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for your patience and us figuring out your audio there. So,
yeah, I like to think every now and again I work in IT, so tech issues are just fun. All right, and thanks.
All right.
No.
All right. Over to Pal. So.
Hey, how's it going?
No, bigger question. How's it going with you?
It's going pretty good. Just enjoying my night. Here to ask a few questions about NFTs.
Do it.
All right. So, 2 questions. The first question is, do you have any plans for doing animated NFT art, or are you just sticking to still images?
No. We'll be doing some animated stuff. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, again, the definition of animated is a big word. Mm-hmm. So we're not gonna get too crazy, but there will be some motion in some of it, not all of it, but some of it for sure. Yep.
All right. And then the other one is when you do releases, do you have any plans for doing like series type things, or is it just going to be singles and collabs, or do you have any set plans for that? I know you said you're just going to kind of gauge how things go with engagement from everybody involved.
Yeah, and so it's an interesting question because, like, I'm a collector myself, so I understand about series and being able to have things that somehow seem like they link together or they're part of a grouping or something like that. Mm-hmm. The counter to that, because I do it all the time with when we're making toys, right? I got to put out 6 toys, and I constantly have this conversation of, do we make it a series so that all 6 toys relate to each other, or do we just put out 6 cool toys? Because if we pick a theme, right, or a series or whatever else, and whatever that is that we pick isn't somebody's cup of tea, mm-hmm. If you then say the next 5 things are going to be part of that same theme, that same sort of rhythm, and people don't like it, then you've lost them for all 6. And so I'm constantly sort of having a conversation. Do we not worry about, what I would call the completist, and just put out cool shit? Because to me, I think that's sort of golden. If you put out cool stuff, people will buy it all day long. Mm-hmm. And over time, can you backdoor some of what you're talking about, which is over time, it's like, oh, there's that one. And then the person buying it can then group it themselves and say, and even if we intentionally say, hey, right, there's going to be this one, and then 4 months later, this one and this one. And if you put those 4 together, they actually belong together. They're sort of a family unit. We'll probably do that. So if we do something that's a series, my guess will be it will be relatively easy to get in and out of. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't become, if my thought again is, if you're going to do something where you want somebody to buy 4 or 5 to complete the series, that mm-hmm. you shouldn't be asking them to spend a lot to complete it. I don't think that's fair. So when we do experiment with it, which we will, I'm sure it'll be some of the easiest stuff to get in and out, because I don't want to say, hey, here's a $50 item and there's 6 of them, so I'm expecting everybody now to give us $300, right? That I don't think that's sort of fair-minded. But if we say, hey, here's 6 things and they cost $5 a pop, I'm making it up, then it may be easier to get people to go, I wasn't going to collect them all, but for $30, I might as well have the whole collection. Boom. So.
All right. Yeah, no, that's a great answer to what I had in mind. That seems like a respectable direction to go in to kind of please everybody.
Well, I don't know if it pleases, I don't know if it pleases everybody, and I don't even know if the answer is right. Here's the thing about sort of running your own businesses and being sort of at the end of any equation. You lean on people that hopefully you trust within your organization. You keep your ear to the ground with the people that are the customers, and then at the end of the day, you just make the best educated guesses you can. And sometimes you get them right, sometimes you get them wrong. And if you make more right, then usually you can stay in business. So I think that at times people who have a little bit of success, people want to give us more credit than we're due. I don't think our thought process is really that much different than probably most people listening to my voice right now. People, they used to ask me, we used to make sports figures, and they used to say, how do you pick the sports figures? I'm like, I don't know, same way that probably everybody at a bar would pick it. I think if I walked into any bar and I said, hey, put your top 10 NBA players, I bet you that guy at the bar who maybe even had too many beers, I bet you 8 of the 10 players he picks are going to be the same 8 out of my 10. We may differentiate on number 9 and 10, but for sure his top 5 and my top 5 are going to be the same. Come on, like we're not doing anything extraordinary. You know, I go and get a DC license. I make Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash. Like, I don't know. It seems like if you had the same license, you might have made the same choices, right? So they sometimes people somehow are very gracious and want to think that what we're doing is a little smarter or more in depth than what they're doing. Not really. Not really. Which is why I start companies, because I didn't believe that to be true. So I go, shit, I can start a company and do it. What are they doing that I can't do? Right? Making plastic figures. What are you talking about? I used to do that when I was a kid. I used to have these little Jello molds my mom used to have. They had like little dinosaurs, and then
I remember those too.
Right, and then you flop it on. It's like toys is sort of a little more complicated than that, but it's just plastic in a mold, right? So Jello in a mold. I mean, yes, it's a little more complicated, but you can make a figure, right? So making a toy, you can make a toy. You just have to find. You have to have the idea, you have to have the art, and then you have to find somebody that will manufacture it for you. Okay, cool, right? So there's a couple hurdles to get there, but it's not impossible. Businesses want you to believe that what they're doing is way more complicated than what they are doing. They want you to think that it's rocket science. It's not, right? I mean, the company that makes and sells you plates and forks and glasses. Like, what are you talking about, right? I could go start making forks tomorrow. I just choose not to, right? But there's a big company that's out there that dominates that market space and wants you to think that it's like, no, you got to have 1,000 employees, and you got to have this, and you got to have this, and you have to have that. And getting shelf space is really the big nirvana of anything. You can have your idea, but if you can't find a store to put your product on a shelf, then you're kind of dead in the water, which is why the internet is such a game changer, because it equalizes. You can now go almost direct to customer, right? You can do these things now, these Kickstarters and things like that, where you just knock all the middlemen out and just say, I got a cool idea. Can I find enough customers to do it? But for me, I was lucky enough that I was able to actually go to these big stores and put my product next to, the Fortune 500 companies and maintain the space. So there's the two hurdles, there's two big hurdles that I don't think people sort of give enough credit to. Is one, not the idea, not sort of making it, but like I said, getting it on the shelf. So if you can convince in our country, in North America, Walmart or Target, to put your product on the shelf, that's gold, right? But the bigger hurdle is still yet to come. Because everybody's like, oh my God, you got your stuff at Walmart. It's not that I got my stuff at Walmart. It's that once they put it on the shelf at Walmart, somebody has to come in and buy it off their shelf. Because if it doesn't go off their shelf, they're not buying more of my product. So the more important piece is, some of the people maybe even that are, in the chat room right now, that have walked into stores and have laid down their hard-earned money and pulled it off the shelf. And then they go, oh, hey, Todd, that product you gave me, it looks like we're selling it. Hey, can you get me some more? Right? And as long as the boxes are coming in to their warehouses and eventually getting put out in the items put out on the shelf and taken out of the store by a customer, then they'll basically keep buying the product. But so people go, woohoo, I just made the sale at a big store. Yeah, well, now let's see if anybody gives a damn, right? Because I would say that mountain is way steeper.
So once you climb that mountain, though, do you ever feel like, so if there's ever a dip in sales or something like that, you find that there's not as much volume that's being sold. How do you counter something like that?
There's only two ways, and we'll do the same thing with our NFTs and our offerings and our drops. You either walk away from your idea because obviously people are not buying it because they don't like it. I mean, you have to concede that sometimes. That your idea, as educated, I guess, as it was, as enthusiastic as you might have been, just didn't resonate with the buying public. And so you just shut it down. And then the other option is you don't shut it down, you tweak it and you alter it. And you find that maybe if you just make a couple of adjustments, then that's all that they wanted. And that may give you enough spark to keep that product out there. So you either have to go find another product, another brand, another line, or you modify or improve the item that you have. And so both of them are a risk, because once people walk away from something because they don't think it's good, it's tough to get them back to say, hey, come back to the new improved version of it. So that's tough. If you shut it down and go get another brand, you have to now go through the whole cycle of educating people, saying, hey, I'm making this. Here's what it looks like. Here's why you might be interested in it. And you have to go through the education of even letting them know it's going to exist, so that they'll come into the stores and take it off the shelf. So neither one of them is an easy task, which is why now, with even people in the NFT space and places like Kickstarter, even people who sell stuff even direct, like on Etsy and these kinds of sites, Alibaba, and people who sell some of their stuff on eBay and stuff like that, that depending on your life and what you want out of it, and we all obviously would like more than we have, just sort of human nature, but if you can do your little craft and put it up in some online place and find enough people, and all you need is 100 people. The question is, can you find 100 people? The great thing about the internet is, and one of the reasons why I'm sort of jumping on the NFTs, is that you can now, hopefully, any place that there's electricity and people got sort of phones or laptops, you can potentially reach them. So if you're a small person, you got your art, and you go, man, if I could only sell 100 of these, make an extra $100. I'm going to sell them for $1 a pop. I make an extra $100 a month. That would be awesome. Shoot, how many countries are in the world? You only got to find like one person for every 2 countries, one person, and that will get you to 100. And so the pressure now isn't that you got to find 100 people in your community, where you used to have to go to the swap meet or the local market and try and sell it to your neighborhood and find 100 people. Now you only have to find 100 people on the globe. Shoot, it's not bad, right? To me, you got a better chance. The downside of that is that everybody's playing that game. So how do people even know that your item exists? And I would say that's sort of the hardest thing in trying to get your product out to eyeballs, which is why finding platforms that have an audience is sometimes the place to go, which is why people will put their stuff on Etsy and eBay because they know there's a lot of people sort of swimming around those pools.
No, it's a lot of great points there. Well, thank you for your time. I'll hop out of here so someone else can get in.
That's it.
So I guess that's me up. Todd, just again, like everybody else's sentiments, thank you for doing this. And based on your wayward dice rolls and the stories we've got to hear, I feel I know way more than I ever thought I wanted to know about Todd Mcfarlane. So thanks for sharing those. Going down that vein, I hope you don't think I love you as much as everybody else, Todd, but I'd love to ask Jake a couple of questions, if that's all right, if he's still online.
Yeah, Jake's way cooler and hipper than his old man, and he's way more in tune with sort of all the stuff that you guys probably get excited about. So
I appreciate that, and I think it's more personal questions, Jake. I know, given you had to grow up having your dad as a bit of a celebrity in the geek world and comic world, I'd be keen to get a sense of sort of what that was like for you. And then the second part of that question is, tell us a little bit about your aspirations and your goals, and what are some of the passion projects that you might have outside of this NFT and even within this NFT world.
For the first question, I didn't really. He was just, a normal dad for me for all the way up until probably when I was 15, and that's when I started going to conventions with him and helping out around the booths, and that's when it started to be like a bit more like, oh, people actually like him. Didn't realize he had this big of a following. I was still kind of young then, so nobody really listened to me when I was helping out at the booth, so I had to learn to build some self-confidence there so I could be like, hey, back up, like the line's getting a little crowded here, or we're cutting off the line, people wouldn't listen to me when I had to go cut off a line or something like that. So the only times I really ever saw any effects from him being in this business was when I was at Comic-Cons with him, and then very occasionally when we'd go out to eat, a random waiter or server would recognize him or something. But there's not as many comic nerds out there as you think. If you're kind of intertwined with them, you think there's a lot more out there, but they're not around too much unless you go to the conventions or something like that. And then aspirations for myself, it's been kind of dry lately. I went to college for 2 or 3 years, didn't really enjoy it, even though I was going into sustainability, which I was passionate about. The classes still kind of didn't hit right for me, and I didn't enjoy them, didn't enjoy the work I was doing there. So I took a break for that and tried to go into a different passion of mine, which has always been gaming, which my parents haven't understood for a long time, but I think in the past year they came around to it a bit more. Helped me build my first gaming PC, and I started streaming about 6 months ago. And I was enjoying that, but I know it's a slow going process and definitely a career for even fewer people than comic book artists. So about 2 or 3 weeks ago, my dad was talking to me right before my birthday celebration, was talking to me about this project and saying he needed help. And I've actually seen my mom work for him and my older sister work for him, and both quit because they couldn't handle him. So I had that in the back of my mind, but I was also kind of just thinking I'm not enjoying college. I can't keep delivering pizzas forever. streaming most likely won't come up. So I've always been interested in his business, not interested in business school. It's kind of a weird thing, but I figured he's given me an opportunity to hop in here. I feel like I just can't pass up the opportunity. So I told him I'd take it a couple of days later, put in my 2 weeks at my other job, and I've been heavy into NFTs ever since, reading everything I can, watching videos on anything that I can, and right now just sitting back in the meetings that they're including me in, and hopefully in a month I'll be able to take over a solid part in those meetings and be able to share my voice, build confidence as I did in those conventions. But that's kind of what I've been going through right now.
Okay. And which sort of games you tend to be streaming? To be honest, I do watch a lot of streamers at times, but haven't had a chance until your dad had mentioned it last week in the chats. But what are the key ones you find are the best to stream or you enjoy streaming?
I say the one I stream the most would mainly be Rocket League, which is a smaller named game, but I'm the most comfortable streaming it as I can kind of focus more on the stream rather than the game and still be able to produce solid content.
Yeah. Okay, nice. No, I appreciate that. There's a couple other people on stage, so I'm going to exit stage left. Todd, just a quick one for you. If you ever see another Gen X / boomer standing in a line when you're at a convention here in Australia and with a short box of Spider-Man 1 Torment variants, 70 or 80 of them to get signed, you'll know that's me at the front of the line, hoping to take a lot of your time as you sign all of those.
Right. I'll hopefully we'll get the chance. Before you go, let me tell you a fun little story about Jake when he was younger. You know how he was saying like he didn't know what his dad did, right?
Yeah.
That one day, I mean, I'm deep into, we started Image Comics officially in 1992. Jake is born in 1999, so his whole world, Dad has been a Spawn guy, right? But from time to time, Marvel would send me trade paperbacks where they would collect my artwork, right? And so I'd get like 5 or 6 from Marvel just saying, hey, we're reprinting your artwork. Here it is. Jake, I remember I pulled it out of the mailbox or something like that. And Jake, I don't even know how old he was. Maybe he was 4 or 5. And he was like, Dad, why do you got that book? And I was like, oh, because I drew it. And he was like going, you could see that, he was trying to compute this, right? Because obviously, even at that point, he didn't even know I was doing Spawn. And he's like, what do you mean? I go, no, I drew this. Like I drew Spider-Man here. And so he goes, he put out his hand. I gave him the book. And he looked at the book and then he pointed to the cover and he said, so you're saying you drew that? And I went, yeah, I drew that. And then suspiciously, because he was very suspicious at this conversation we were having. And then he opened it up and then he went to another page and he goes, and he pointed to like one of the panels and he goes, did you draw that? And I'm like, yeah, no, Jake, I drew that. And then he went to another page and he's like, did you draw that? And he was being very specific. Did you draw? And it was like, eventually I'd say, Jake, everything in that book I drew. It's not just that and that. It's like everything in that book I drew. Every drawing you see, I drew it. Now that got the wheels sort of turning. And then he like, after I said that to him, he looked at the book because now he's like, what? Like he's trying to process Dad did every single line that's in this book. So then he started all over again. And then he went, did you do this building? And I went, yes. And then he went, did you do this building? Yeah. Did you do this building? Yeah. He was blown away that I would draw so many buildings. So I didn't think anything about it. I thought we'd be more concerned about Spider-Man. Fast forward like 4 or 5 days later, somebody's come to the house. It might have even been the mailman or something delivering a package. And Jake sort of comes to the door and I'm talking to the mailman and Jake sort of goes, hang on. And he goes upstairs and he goes and grabs this book and he comes down this trade paperback that had, literally hundreds of pages of Spider-Man. And he came down and he went to the post office guy, the UPS guy, and he goes, look at this. And he opens it up and he goes, see that building? My dad did that building. And then he went to another page. He goes, see that building? My dad did that building. He didn't give a shit about Spider-Man. It was just, He was way more impressed that I did all these little tiny windows on all of it. So for him, I was like, wow, my dad draws best buildings on the whole block here, right? So I didn't care about, and like that there was Wolverine and Hulk and the Spider-Man and on any of it. That would come a little bit later. So he was just like, who's the dumbass that will draw buildings all day long? It didn't even like make any sense to him. And why would anybody give you money to draw buildings? But eventually he came around and figured out what his dad did for a living. So.
Yeah, it's interesting how you see the world through your kids' eyes and what's important to them. And yeah, same sort of thing. Any little thing that you don't even think is important to them, and a sense of pride. So yeah, thank you for sharing that story. It certainly resonates for me as a father. And Jake, I appreciate you taking the time to share a little bit about you as well. So I wish you the best in all your endeavours, and hopefully those as you find your way in the world and really decide what you want to be when you grow up, that it all comes to fruition for you.
Thank you. Hopefully I'll be around here for a long time.
Yeah, he's going to take over. So, all right, appreciate it. All right.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Jake.
All right, be good. Looks like I've got a couple more questions, and then we'll let everybody sort of get on with their day or go to bed or wherever you're at. So we'll start here with Superfan. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Come on, calm down for a second, bud.
All right.
Take a breath.
I'm sorry. I just have a speech impediment. So yeah.
Take your time.
Anyway, it's nice to meet you, Todd. I really like your I really like your artwork.
Well, thank you.
And what was it like on working on Spider-Man, like through your whole run? And did you like have like freedom on doing whatever you want, or did you had like I will say, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that, and yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Are you finished with your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's sort of an interesting thing when you get to draw a character that you sort of grew up knowing about, or in some cases even reading. Because I had the odd Spider-Man comic book when I was a kid in my hand, although I wasn't a collector. Just, mom and dad would buy us the odd comic book when we were going on a road trip. And then I started collecting in a pretty severe way, starting at 16 when I thought I was going to break into it. So Spider-Man comic books were, wow, cool. The thing that's weird, at least for me, was that when I was drawing Spider-Man, it didn't seem like it was the same book that I was collecting, because it's sort of like, I sort of liken it, and maybe it's a bad sort of analogy, of going to like a magic show, right? When you're in the audience and you're watching the magic, it's all really spectacular. And you're just like, you're going, wow. But if you actually become the magician and you're up on stage, so in this case, I became the professional, and the tricks, and you're doing it 10 hours a day and whatever else, a little bit of the luster goes off of it. So in a weird way, it sometimes almost diminishes your joy of the comic book, even, collecting it, because it doesn't seem like that you're the ones that's producing it. that's the same thing, that there used to be another human being that was producing the ones that used to give you so much joy. So you're on the inside. So it's a sort of a weird thing that was sort of playing with my brain. When they came to me on the Spider-Man book, essentially the Spider-Man, I think, had dropped out of the top 20 for sales at Marvel, and they were just looking for something to happen. And so they put a new team together, and they just said, hey guys, whatever you guys can sort of come up with. And so I took that with way more liberty than what they probably meant. Because, some people were missing deadlines and they couldn't find a steady art team and writing team on it. So I think they're probably just looking for stability, where I took it as, oh my God, they're saying I can have fun. And let me just sort of tell everybody, I don't think people appreciate that when you're like a novelist or you're like a comic book artist, or there are other sort of trades that are like this. For the most part, the job is you and yourself in a room with nobody else for 10 to 12 hours a day. I mean, it's a pretty lonely occupation. And because of that, you have to figure out ways to entertain yourself. And there's only one way to entertain yourself. You have to have a little bit of sort of joy in what you're doing. So the joy has to come on the page. So when I was doing Spider-Man, there's, I went, hey, they said we could do some cool stuff. Or at least like, hey, it's out of the top 20, whatever you guys can do. I just started having fun with it. And I said before, that really sort of the biggest change I did, I didn't know it was going to sort of help my career, and I didn't know it was going to bother Marvel comic books a little bit too much, was I made the emphasis on the word spider instead of the word man. And up to that point, I felt like the emphasis was on the word man. And I just go, I want to play with the word spider. So once I put him in the costume, I didn't care about anatomy. I didn't care that the human body could go into those poses. I just go, what would be the coolest image that looks like a bug that I could possibly come up with? And I made the eyes way bigger than there were. I put way more webbing on his costume. I even added a lot of dark sort of shadows on the blue part of it. And then came the webbing that up to that point was, I liken it to like Tarzan swinging from a vine. He just went from vine to vine. Spider-Man was essentially doing the same thing. And I wanted to try and come up with a visual that would allow me to shoot the webbing towards camera, just because it would be dramatic and it would be cool. And the way that the webs had been designed at that point and had been for 30 years, you couldn't do it. And I thought it took away a lot of possibilities. So not only did I sort of give the webbing some dimension, I made it really big and long, almost like a cowboy at a rodeo show that's trying to lasso a cow or something like that. And I didn't think of any of. At no time was I thinking that I was like breaking any rules. I just took that. Hey, the book wasn't selling very well, so go have some fun. And I'm in a room by myself, and I'm gonna go. Yeah, this would be cool. This would be cool. This would be cool. This would be cool. And luckily at that time, whatever it was that I was doing on Spider-Man, and maybe part of it was because he was in a little bit of a lull, some of these changes sort of caught the attention of the readers, and the sales started sort of percolating up and up and up and up. And then, my standing in the company started going up, and I started winning sort of artistic awards and took over inking. And, at that point, we'd help create Venom, David Mcfarlane and I. So we were adding some new characters to the fold and all of it. But at some point, they just started coming back to me and just saying, Todd, you're messing with the icon too much. And it was really the beginning of those conversations that over time eventually led me to quit. It was constant conversations of, Todd, you got to pull this back and you got to dial this back. And why are you doing this? And we haven't done it that way for 30 years. And, and these odd conversations while the sales were continuing to increase. And to me, I was overly simplistic about all of it, saying, I thought you guys hired me to sell comic books. I'm selling comic books for you. And like, why am I the bad guy here? To the point that they even gave me a Spider-Man book that I could write in pencil and ink myself. It set a sales record at that point. It's still the single best-selling comic book for Marvel or DC for a single creator. And I mean a single creator as somebody who did the writing and the artwork, a single author. I own the record. I don't say that bragging, I just say as a fact. For a single authored book, comic book, I own the record in the corporate world. A few years later, when I do Spawn, I also set the record. I own the record outside the corporate world. So I own even as of today, I own the record inside and outside. And yet, when I was doing Spider-Man and setting records, I still was having these odd conversations where what I was doing wasn't good enough, and I had to bring it back. And at that point, there was a point where Spider-Man was the number one selling book at their company, and it still wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for them, and it was like I don't know what else I can do. I took a book and one of your characters all the way to the top of the charts. No other book that you publish is selling as much as this book. And I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else. I'm not saying that I'm more skilled than anybody else. I'm just saying the book is selling more than the others. We'll leave it at that. Why am I the bad guy here? And eventually I just got wore out. I just didn't want to have those conversations anymore. And there was an incident that happened, and that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. And I was going to become a father for the first time, and I just went, you know what, guys, enough. I can't do this dance anymore. I gotta get out of here. So it's too bad, because I enjoyed the character. I had a lot of fun with it. And it was very good for my career, but it was an interesting time. So there's a lot of good that went with it, and then there's a lot of oddness that went with it too. So.
Wow, wow. I'm sad that you left Marvel. Like, even though you were still like like you were still running really good, and Marvel just said no, you can't do it, and then it caused you to leave.
Here's what I'll tell you, because I know my personality. Even if they had let me do whatever I wanted, I just know that eventually I just have this sort of rebel spirit in me, this, pushing back against systems that I don't know why. I just been doing it my whole life. If it wasn't then, it would have been somewhere in the future. I wasn't going to be a lifer. I'm not wired that way. So, but again, my experience was mine, and there are other people that could have been put in the exact same situation with the exact same circumstances, and they might have quit 2 years earlier, or they may have stayed 20 years longer. So it's personality comes into all these situations, and we all just have to sort of mitigate our own personal lives. And for me, it was just, they were wearing me out, and I was going to become a dad for the first time, and I didn't know what that was going to mean. I didn't know how much time that was going to take. So it just seemed like the right time to just sort of, hang it up and go try something different. That other thing called Spawn has worked out pretty well.
Yes.
All right. Appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on board and asking.
Yep. Anyway. Yep.
But all right, Insular, you're up. You're the caboose here tonight.
Amazing. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Coming through. Yeah, cool. Hey, first of all, I just want to say a massive thanks for getting into this space. I really got super pumped, super excited when I heard about the OddKey project, and yeah, it just feels like a whole heap of my worlds are coming together. So huge thanks on that. So basically, I'm a sort of a 20 plus year graphic designer myself. Something that I've struggled with in the beginning of my career more so is imposter syndrome. So I'm not sure if this is a question that's been asked of you before, Todd, but yeah, I'd like to know.
I know what you're asking every day. Every day I'm aware of that. Every day.
No way.
Like where you live right now?
I'm in Sydney, Australia.
Okay, so if you know or you don't know, I was born in Canada, little Canadian kid, right? What are you talking about? Every day of my life, I just go, why are they letting some dumb ass Canadian kid come down here in America and basically sort of thrive and sometimes even like say nice things about you and it's this weird thing of like, I keep thinking that like my 15 minutes of fame has lasted way longer than it should, right? And I've talked to other Canadian people who've made it. They sort of have the same sort of attitude, like you're saying, like somehow we think that they're going to eventually find out that we're bamboozling them, that we're not as good as they've given us credit for. But when the balloon finally does burst, like I'm not going to begrudge it because I go, it was a heck of a ride, and I was able to con him, I guess, for 30 years. But at some point, if you can keep the con going for 30, then it makes it a little easier to go 31. 32, 33, you know what I mean? At some point, it's like, maybe they're not going to wake up to the fact that there are a lot more smarter people, more skilled people, more talented people out there. I just happen to sort of muscle my way in and be a little tenacious in other places. But I can tell you that I still have, even if I do a store signing, I don't do that or whatever, if I'm going to go do something, that my heart still races that I'm going to come around the corner and there's going to be nobody there, right? That it's like, finally they're going to figure it out. And it's like, all right, it's over. But luckily, every time I turn a corner, there's at least a decent amount of people, and sometimes a lot of people. So it's like, oh, I get to keep going one more week, and I've turned that gig into over 3 decades. But I don't get it. I know I have conversations with the young kids, especially in the comic book industry, and I don't understand. It's like it seems like a generation has skipped. I don't understand, and I say this with all sincerity. I don't understand why an old man like me is still relevant. Normally what ends up happening in almost any other business, any other trade, is that, the sort of the group comes in and they make their mark, and then they get to basically sort of be, sort of the center of attention for a while. And then there's a natural bell curve to everybody's career. And then you get pushed out because somebody else comes along that's just, taller, faster, better looking, more skilled, whatever profession you're in, and then the next wave comes, and then eventually that wave, and then the next wave comes, and then the next wave. And it's weird to me that in our industry right now, where we were doing that when we were kids, what are you talking about? Our group, our goal was to be the best we could and to sort of eventually knock off whoever was sort of sitting at the top of the mountain. And we sort of got there, and in a weird way, it's strange that us old men haven't been knocked off. Guys like Greg Capullo and Andy and Adam Kubert and Frank Miller and Mark Silvestri and Jim Lee and and Wills Portacio and myself that we're still relevant, and we're in our 50s, 60s now, and it's like, what are you talking about? Come on, you. I keep saying, man, when I was 20, like I'm super sort of competitive. Like if you had told the 25-year-old Todd Mcfarlane that the guy you had to knock off was 50 or 60, I would have laughed. I would have gone, what are you talking about? Started beating up on my dad. Like, what do you like? No. I'm going to take down that 35-year-old who's the hot guy right now. I'm going to take him down. And so it's weird that there isn't this group that's trying to push us old men out. Like what we should be is like nice footnotes, and have made our mark, but we had our time in the sun, just like a popular band, but we were an 80s band, we were a 90s band, right? Why is our music still playing? It's weird. It's a head scratcher to me. I don't quite get it, especially given that I see the talent that's out there, and it is staggeringly good. The talent pool is so deep right now. It's the deepest I've ever seen it in my life. But it just doesn't seem like there's this wave of them that want to sort of organize and just go, no, we're going to be the 2020 group for the next 10 years. But cool, it's been good for my career, but I like I said, I don't get it. I wish there was 20, 30 of them coming, with not only the skill, but with the sort of the tenacity to do it. But I don't know what's changed. I don't know what's different about it. So.
No, thanks for sharing. Thanks for having me up on stage. And yeah, I'm just super pumped for where this is all going.
Oh, well, we appreciate hopefully we can deliver some things that may be of interest. Again, our option as an artist, this. I consider myself a guy who was just running a buffet, right? You put out 100 items, and and you just expect every customer to only put 4 or 5 on their plate, right? Nobody ever takes all 100 items. So, my expectation isn't that everybody consumes everything that Steve or I are going to put out, or anybody else. It's just, hey, here's some offerings, and pick and choose the ones that seem sort of interesting to you personally. That's it. And walk away from the others. No harm, no foul. So.
No, I've got no doubt it's going to be a great success. Thanks again.
All right, appreciate it. All right, and with that, we will wind up. I appreciate everybody's been hanging around here for a while. It's been taking hours, so sorry it took so long. I keep thinking we can get in onto the questions a little bit sooner than that, but we'll continue to sort of do these little pop-up events. Again, just as a FYI, anybody that is in the audience at any time we do these, you're more than free to sort of get in line and ask your questions, no matter sort of what the topic is. I have a theory. I've had journalists ask me, what's the dumbest question somebody's ever asked you? And my answer is always the same. Like, there is no dumb question, because if a human being is going to take the time to ask me a question that I assume that it was important to them, and I owe them the respect to give them an answer back. It may be silly to somebody else in the room, but not to that individual. So I owe them the courtesy of answering it, because you never know that there's not half the people in the room that have the same question, that they're just too shy to ask anyways. And now, look at this. We don't even have, people don't even get to see you, and they don't even know your name. It's even more anonymous, so it makes it even easier to basically come up on stage and ask a question. So next time, I welcome all of you to come up and ask a question. So, Latu, appreciate your time again, and all the group there, all the moderators. Jake, thanks for hanging for a couple hours with the old man here. We'll try and do it all again.
Say the word.
All right. Good night, everybody.